What's up guys, welcome back to another KJ Lifestyle video, and in today's video we're going to be installing the M45iL spark plugs by HKS for my 2018 Kia Stinger GT2. Now I'm doing this solely for the purpose of running the JB4 maps 2 through 5. Once you start running E30, E85, that mix with 93, you can do map 3, which makes a whole lot of a difference with this car. So this is just going to be an instructional video on how to do the spark plugs without taking off the intake manifold, because this car is very tricky with doing the spark plugs on the passenger side. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so here we have the HKS spark plugs. These are already pre-gapped. You're going to want to gap these anywhere from 0.022 to 0.024. I wouldn't recommend going any higher. In this video, I'm going to show you some of the tools you need. I definitely recommend buying at least 2 of these U-joint swivel sockets. If you don't have these, stop watching this video and go buy them, because they're going to make your life a whole lot easier once we get to the passenger side. I actually did the same thing that I did when I was installing the tune. Locked the car, kept the hood open, and put the key 15 feet away just so the ECU can go to sleep. So that way when we start unclipping stuff and then we start the car again, the ECU doesn't notice the difference at all. So we're just doing that as an extra safety precaution. I know some other people also unplug the negative terminal, but I decided not to do that for this install. Alright, so here we're just going to locate all of our spark plugs. You can see the white dots. That is 1, that's bank 1 right there. 2 and 3 is right back here. Now coming to the passenger side, you can obviously see these ones right here, how these are much more difficult. We got 4 right here, 5 is the difficult one right there. And then come around to the back, we have 6. You can kind of see it underneath that little hose right there. So we're going to start by doing the driver's side. All you're going to need is a 10mm socket to undo the coil packs right there. And then you're also going to want to take a very small flathead screwdriver to disconnect the clips that are located right here. Then all you do is push those down and pull out. Alright, so the first step of the process, you're going to take a 10mm and an extension. I also have a little magnet tool to get the bolt out. All you're going to do is take that bolt out for the coil pack and then wiggle out the coil pack. It comes off with some force, but don't be too aggressive. Then all you're going to do is take your plug socket and a 6-inch extension and back out the old spark plug. Make sure you pull this out slowly so you don't drop the plug, and you can also give it a little inspection as well just to see how good or bad the old plugs were. These were the OEM NGKs. Now when you put the HKS plug in, make sure you turn it in very slow and it doesn't have any sort of force. If it has force, that means you're cross-threading it, so back it out. And there's a lot of threads here, so make sure you turn it in slowly and torque it down to spec. Next step of the process for cylinders 2 and 3 is making sure that you pull out those little gray clips and then you take off the wiring harness. And from here you can just do the same thing, 10mm socket and an extension. The other thing I also did is I did one at a time just so it didn't get confusing which wiring harnesses go where, because if you do these the wrong way and you start the car, it is not going to be happy. So unplug one at a time, take out the old plug, put in a new one, put the coil pack back on, and then you should be good to go. Another thing I want to mention is we did take out these 2 hoses right here with just a little clip and a flathead screwdriver just so we had some more play. And there was also another 10mm harness for one of these wires right here that we were able to lift up. As you can see, it's just repeating this process for cylinders 2 and 3. And I believe on cylinder 3 we did use one of our U-joints just to make it a little bit easier. But once again, make sure when you seat the new plug, it's seated properly and it's not cross-threading. A good way to know that you're properly seated on the plug with your socket is to just by hand put it down in the cylinder head, turn it a little bit, you'll feel it grab and it'll push down. That's that little rubber grommet grabbing the top of the spark plug. The last step of the process is plugging in your harnesses. As I said before, if you do this one at a time, it's not going to be a problem. So this is where things get a little bit interesting. As you can see on the passenger side, this is cylinder number 5. What we did was we just took our small socket and a 10 mil. We went underneath the intake manifold and we pretty much just cracked that bolt. From there we were able to wiggle that socket off and then by hand just take out the bolt and wiggle out the coil pack. The coil pack you do have to turn a little bit to get out here between the intake manifold and that little clamp right there, but it's not too bad. From this one right here, you can see that I used the U-joint right into the spark plug socket, and then I put the 6-inch extension on the top of that just to get that bend. So this is the easiest way of getting this plug properly seated and making sure you have the right bends in your tools. From here we move back to cylinder number 6. So we're skipping 5 for now, which is the very hard one underneath the intake manifold. Here you can use, once again, just the socket and the 10 mil, no extensions, just to break loose the coil pack bolt, and then you can wiggle out the coil pack. I believe this one I used the spark plug socket, a 3-inch extension, the U-joint, and then the 6-inch extension, just so I could have the proper bends to get down in cylinder number 6. For cylinder number 5, I actually used a 10 mil wrench. It would be very convenient if you had one that adjusted and was a ratchet, just to be able to get that off a lot easier. But this flat wrench was the easiest way that I found to get the bolt off of the coil pack. Now this is where it gets a little scary because the coil pack is most likely going to come off when you're trying to take it out from underneath the intake manifold. The coil pack is essentially 3 parts. The top part where you can see that plastic head, there is a spring inside of that which essentially touches on the top of the spark plug, and then there's a little boot that sits down over the spark plug so that spring always is touching. So most likely it's going to come off in 2 parts. The top part is going to come off first, and this way you can kind of wiggle it off through where my right hand is with my blue wristband. From here you can see I have a flathead screwdriver just kind of picking up the boot that goes over the spark plug, and I can take it off from the back with my left hand. This is the very intricate bend with the U-joints. This is where you're going to need both. So for the extension here, this one I used the 3-inch extension, then I did both U-joints back to back, and then the 6-inch extension as you can see here. And this was able to give me the bend that I needed. It is a little bit tricky because these U-joints want to bend every which way, so you have to make sure they are as straight as possible, especially when you're putting them back in. Now, one trick I learned thanks to my dad, who is a mechanic, on the U-joints we put some electrical tape. This is going to keep it as straight as possible. These are still going to bend because it's flexible, it's just not going to bend as much, so it's going to keep it, like I said, as straight as possible without the risk of cross-threading. All I did was 2 or 3 wraps around each of the joints, as you can see from that previous video, and it was able to help us out a lot. You still want to make sure that it's going in straight, so when it does start to bend, just kind of readjust your angle and you should be able to keep going. From here, the next step is going to be reinstalling the coil pack. You have to do it again in 2 pieces. It is a little bit scary because sometimes the spring just sticks down, and you want to make sure that there is a good connection from that spring to the top of the spark plug. All you have to do is seat the coil pack first, the bottom part, which is that little boot, put that over the spark plug with the spring still in it, and then the only thing left to do is get the coil pack, the top part with that plastic piece, down over top of that boot and push down. Make sure you kind of feel like a little snap. The other thing I did was I kind of pulled it straight up and looked under the bottom to make sure that both pieces were connected. And then we were able to push that back down and put in the bolt again. Now the bolt was a little bit tricky as well. I had to go very, very slow with that flat wrench. Just kind of do 1 rotation at a time. It took me a few tries, but was able to get that in there. Another very important piece to remember is make sure that you install the cylinder 5 wiring harness before you put in the cylinder 6 coil pack. This is going to give you a lot more space to get your hand down in there and push in that clip, as opposed to trying to do it over top of the cylinder 6 coil pack. Once again, when you're taking out the spark plugs, you want to take them out from cylinders 4, 6, and then 5. And then when you're installing everything, mainly the coil packs, you want to install 5, 6, and then go back to 4. I will say everyone had the most trouble with 5, whether it be the coil pack, the spark plug, the bolt, just getting it out. That was difficult, but honestly the hardest part we had was tightening down the cylinder 4 coil pack. As you can see, we went underneath the intake manifold with our 10mm and the socket, but what happened was it didn't go in straight the first time, so when we backed it out, the socket actually got stuck between the bolt and the intake manifold. As you can see right here, it's still a little bit wiggly, so when we tried to take it off, that's when it got stuck. This can be resolved if you have a 1/4-inch swivel. I didn't have that, so make sure you invest in one of those. If you do that, it's gonna make your life 10 times easier when you're trying to put it back in. So we just finished the install with the spark plugs. Just gonna do a quick little double check here. As you can see, cylinder 1, 2, and 3, everything's plugged in. Coming to the other side, we got 4, 5, and then 6 right there on the bottom. Everything's good. Alright, so that is going to do it for this video. Stay tuned for the next few videos as I'm going to be running E30 on map 3. We're going to do a comparison between map 1, map 2, and map 3. Eventually we'll get to map 4 or map 5, but that'll be later down on the road. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like. Also hit that subscribe button. We are on our way to 1,000 subscribers. So thank you guys for your support so far. Be sure to share it with a friend as well. Let's get some more engagement with the channel. Leave a comment, all that good stuff. Until next time, that is going to do it for today's video. Remember to be kind, be happy, and be grateful. And I'll see you in the next one.